Now, as some of you know, I used to take quite a lot of drugs back in the day, and admittedly, that intense and non-discerning usage did bring me to the edge of my sanity. It made me ill mentally and physically. But this goes back to my point earlier about how we've got to start making clear distinctions, because some drugs messed with me, but some drugs didn't. I'm not saying that the drugs that are good for me are necessarily good for you. Now, this is another point, that some drugs worked for me and some didn't, but that isn't necessarily universal and across the board. What works for some doesn't always work for others. So hey, I'm not saying that all good drugs are good drugs and all bad drugs are bad drugs. Some people probably take heroin and it works for them, and they live a very happy life. Very possible. But what I'm saying is that the distinctions must be made, but not universally. So it's a very personal thing. So what I'm saying is, be clear when you're talking about a drug with someone. Be clear as to how it affected you. And be discerning with the way you word things and the way you title things. It's just a very important point in my opinion. Like, I even bring this point up in my Salvia Divinorum video. I keep on saying, oh, I don't like to call it a drug. I like to call it a magical herb. And, you know, I still stick to that to a certain extent. I think I could have put it across a little bit better. But the general gist of my point still stands. That, you know, Salvia Divinorum isn't a drug like alcohol is. Salvia Divinorum isn't a drug like meth is. It is a herb. A herb that induces altered states of consciousness that should be revered, if anything. So, let's be clear about what we're talking about here. Now, we're talking about entheogens in this video. And I can say, from my personal experience, entheogens have only ever done good things for me.
Me too.
Yeah, and Chelsea. Chelsea, would you like to say what you've done?
Well, the only entheogen that I've ever taken was magic mushrooms. I took it in tea form. All I can say was that it was just a really beautiful experience, and there was nothing foreboding or horrible about it. It was an excellent trip, and it just really opened my eyes to the reality of dimensions other than this one.
And this goes back to my point earlier that I have had, I think I mentioned this, I have had bad trips on mushrooms, and I'm not denying that. So, you know, maybe what I said a minute ago, that entheogens have only ever done good things for me, might not have been clear enough. Because yes, I have had bad trips, but my point is that those bad trips didn't leave me with mental scars. They didn't affect my body permanently. And if anything, they made me realise that I wasn't going about my life purpose in the right way. Look, let's put it this way. Entheogens magnify what you're already feeling. So if you're feeling good, you're going to feel even better.
Yeah.
If you're feeling insightful, you're going to feel even more insightful. But the few times that I did have bad trips on shrooms were when I was in a bad mental state. So it goes into that whole set and setting thing. You've got to be in the right place with the right people, and you've got to be in the right state of mind. So I would say that when I was in a good frame of mind, entheogens only ever treated me with respect. And well, that's not the right way to put it, because even when they treated me in a way that scared me, they were still treating me with respect, because they were respecting the fact that I needed to see the problems in my life. They realised that I needed to see where I was going wrong, and they showed me. And even the bad trips left me with insight, and they left me with a sense of where to go next. So hey, you know, they respect you regardless. They don't have this kind of thing, well, you're in a bad mood, so I'm going to fuck with you. You know, it's not like that. They say, you're in a bad mood, so we're going to highlight and magnify why you're in a bad mood, and bring you to the point where you're looking over the precipice and you've got to make the decision that I'm either going to drop over it or I'm going to pull back and help myself. So bad trips can actually be beneficial to you in the long run.
What I really liked about my mushroom experience was that afterwards there was no sort of come down for me whatsoever. It was just kind of like, while I was tripping, the veil between this reality and another reality was so thin that I could clearly see through it. And all that happened when I was coming off of the shrooms was that it just thickened. There was no sort of like depression or, you know, oh darn, I'm coming off of this drug, I'm gonna feel like shit the next day. The next day I was incredibly inspired. You know, there was an afterglow that lasted for a really long time. And in a sense is still lasting.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I love the afterglow effect of entheogens. The good drugs opened my eyes to the bigger picture of life, and the bad drugs made me realise how much I wanted to follow this path of light and not devolve into darkness and addiction. So this is what I was saying a minute ago, even bad trips or bad drugs or whatever have a positive effect in the long run. So say for example, when I used to take bad drugs, they made me lose my flow when it comes to my ability to be coherent and make sense and formulate eloquent sentence structures. The bad drugs made me lose that flow, but it was the bad drugs that made me care that I'd lost that flow in the first place. Do you see what I mean? That I don't think I would have necessarily even cared that I'd lost my flow if I didn't feel depressed and down and totally ruined by these bad drugs. It left me feeling so crappy and disappointed in myself. Like say for example, when I used to do like loads of MDMA and booze and weed over a weekend, I'd get to the end of that weekend and feel like crap physically, but more so mentally, and I'd just be sitting there thinking, I can't think straight, I can't talk. Like even if I tried to talk, I'd stutter and stumble and falter on my words. But the reason I cared about that so much was because I felt like crap by the lingering after effects of the come down. So it was those moments that actually made me realise how much I wanted to be of the light and not of the darkness. So to sum it up and put it into a very concise, digestible chunk for you to all understand, I realised and I saw the light for what it truly was whilst I was in the dark. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you have to take hardcore stimulants to come to that realisation, but I'm just telling you about my journey and my path and how I came to be at this moment that I'm in now. And like I said, the good, the bad and the ugly, it all helped and it all got me to where I am, so I don't regret anything. I wouldn't change anything for the world really, because I have a feeling that if I hadn't hit rock bottom, I wouldn't be as high as I am now. It's like by hitting rock bottom, you look up to the stars and you say, fuck this, I don't want to be down here no more. But if you didn't drop down to that place in the first place and you was just kind of in the middle, like not depressed, not really happy, very neutral and apathetic, then you might not feel the need to look up because you're just plodding along. Yeah, this will do, this is good enough. So I might still be on that level. But because, bang, I hit rock bottom, it made me want to build back up and even go past this middle bit and just keep on climbing. And that's why I'm here now, in California, living my dream, you know, doing what I really want to do in life. I doubt I'd be here now if I hadn't taken drugs.